We talk about the discrimination, the prejudice. The real thing is the racism. People say, I'm not doing anything. And you don't need to do anything to continue racism. Racism thrives through inaction.
Do you believe that before there can truly be authentic reconciliation, there has to be a recognition
Sure.
of what has taken place?
Sure. There's no place you can run in America that the land isn't stolen. We have to start by being honest and say, everything we have is tainted. And now start walking with the humility.
This country is really interested in seeing us come to this place where we can begin to address our past and bring about an effort to try to resolve some of this mindset. Welcome to the show today. You know, it's impossible to watch the news and not be confused, stressed out, and even scared. The tension in our country, for multiple reasons, is a nonstop situation that could leave us feeling bewildered. Now, whether it's the economy, government, or society as a whole, all of it is simply exhausting. It's hard to believe in this day and age that race relations are one of the things triggering a divide in our nation. Many of us are left feeling hopeless. But today, we're going to have a real conversation about how to heal our nation and take a step towards racial reconciliation in America. My guest today is a personal friend of mine, an expert healer on race relations. He's a voice to the subject of fear, a modern-day abolitionist, and a thought leader, all in one. We're going to pray for our nation as we learn to put our differences aside and love one another in the spirit of unity. I invite you to join me for this special edition of Your World, and we'll be right back.
Changing one life, time after time. Oh Lord, we do it all for you.
Through the trials I see, I'll always believe a new life starts with me. Oh,
Change your world today. Change is gonna come your way. Change and get an understanding. His grace will transform you.
Welcome back. My guest today is Mike Smith. He's a pastor, an accomplished author, and a spiritual mentor to many. He has spoken at conferences nationally and internationally, is a frequent minister at my events, and was a presenter at various TEDx events. He is a father of 2 beautiful children and husband to the love of his life. And in addition to all of that, what many don't know about Mike Smith is his keen insight into race relations, and more importantly, God's plan to bring healing in this area. So please help me and welcome Mike Smith to Your World today. Hey, buddy. Oh, you know, for me today, to have you on this show, it's just like what we do.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes, sir.
it's the lunch we have or the time that we spend together. But I'm so excited about what God has shown you. I like and love the balance, the revelation, and the insight that my heart is that America could hear it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world could hear it. So I want to begin with this question. What is your opinion concerning the state of our nation right now?
Well, I have a natural opinion, a spiritual opinion. I'll start spiritual first. Napoleon said, don't ever interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. And I think the devil is making a mistake by getting everyone so saturated in fear, division, negativity. He thinks he's advancing his cause, but I believe in actuality he's opening up hearts to hear peace and truth and healing like never before. So I look at our country, I look at the world, and I'm not afraid, because I believe that the more worn out people are by all this constant strife, negativity, pettiness, the more open they're going to be to hear the word of the Lord. And so, spiritually speaking, I'm excited. I'm not afraid. Jesus is still on the throne. I think, you know, Supreme Court passes a law, somebody gets elected, somebody doesn't get elected, and I think the vast majority of people assume, you know, well, Jesus has left the building, and that nothing could be further from the truth. This is our time to shine. This is our time to demonstrate that the wisdom of God is higher than the wisdom of the world. We've been training for a day like this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, we were talking the other day, and the number 17 means complete victory.
Yeah.
And I believe we're in a season where we're going to see some things come to its completion. And I said earlier that God never calls anybody that's already been prepared, you know, or even that's perfect, or even qualified.
Yeah.
But what God will do is he'll call you, and then he'll qualify you.
Yes.
Who are we to say who God can use and who God can't use?
That's it. That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
So as you look at this, I remember when you were in Jacksonville, man, you wrote a serious article on racism in America. You dealt with the rappers who were singing, and you dealt with people who were financially benefiting from those rappers.
Yeah.
What was the repercussion of that article that you put out?
My basic thought on racism, race relations, is that we have a wrong understanding of the problem, so we're prescribing the wrong solution. It's if you misdiagnose, you misprescribe. And the reason we're still having the same conversation that we've had for several hundred years in this country. I was in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. I was actually during 2008, and what I was doing in Vegas, it has to stay there. But I was sitting talking to a gentleman, and the subject of the election came up. President Obama was running against McCain, I believe it was. A guy told me, he said, you know, young fella, he said, the first election I had a chance to vote in, the issues were race, the economy, the Middle East, and the war. He said, it's been 40 years. What are the issues? I said, race, the Middle East, economy, and the war. This is the world. They operate from natural wisdom, lowercase w. And the solution is not in the lowercase w wisdom, it's in the capital wisdom. So the article I wrote was trying to call out what I perceive to be the real issue. And the real issue in America is not prejudice, because I don't think you'll ever fully get rid of ignorance. It's not even discrimination, where sometimes people, based on their prejudice, decide certain things to discriminate against a group of people. It's racism, and racism is systemic. Prejudice requires a human mind and a heart. Discrimination requires a human hand. But racism doesn't need either. It just churns in the background. It just goes on generation after generation and produces the same outcomes over and over and over again. So I questioned, dealing with music, the rap artists or artists, they're immaterial. They're really a puppet of a bigger system. Who assigned the role of criminal to the black man in our nation? I mean, why is it that when a white man gets up and raps about who he's going to kill, who he's going to rob, who he's going to shoot, they say, you're being fake, stop it, don't, you know, be yourself. But when a young black guy gets up and sings it, it's like, now that's authentic. As a matter of fact, if he's arrested for a crime, he's even more authentic, because in America, we've assigned the role of criminal to that man. Wow. And until you start shining the light on the hidden you know, it's not, you know, people say the N-word, and there's a whole, we could talk a whole bunch on that, but we talk about the discrimination, the prejudice. The real thing is the racism. People say, I'm not doing anything. And you don't need to do anything to continue racism. Racism thrives through inaction. You got to do something to stop it.
Wow,
and so that's,
wow.
That's what that article was
about. Wow. I'm sitting here trying to milk that. Racism strives through inaction.
Inaction, yeah.
Go ahead and continue, man.
Well,
don't let me interrupt you.
Well, here's the thing. So, how many years? So, in the United States currently, and the numbers are changing. Dr. King used to always talk about gradualism, and the enemy was gradualism. People kept saying it'll get there. At what human cost? You know, if blacks are 6 to 7 to 1 overrepresented in prison, 7 to 8 to 1 overrepresented in homicide, 3 to 4 to 1, depending on who you deal with, adults or children, up to 5 to 1, overrepresented in poverty. People say, well, it's getting better. So we go another 40 years, another 80 years of crying mothers, broken families, etc. we don't even know what we're after. You know, when President Obama was elected, I told my church, we prayed over him, and just declared over he and his family, and no tragedy, and no, you know, just I'm grateful to God to see him finish his course. But I said, you know, this is great. I remember watching CNN the night of the election, and a guy says, well, former Secretary of Education said, well, let this be the signal to everybody that racism is over in America. And I couldn't believe that statement. And I told my church, watch the bus stop. Watch the bus stop. We've got a black president, which, you know, was carefully marketed as black, but also white, like, you know, I mean, it's very carefully constructed. You know, an African-American president, you know, this is a big conversation on that. But we patted ourselves on the back and said, well, we got rid of that. But the bus stop, the prison, poverty, education, HIV, we don't even know where we're going because we won't know how to measure when we get there. My theory is this, if black males are 6% of the population, they ought to be 6% of prison. They ought to be 6% of the homicide victimization. And in America, it's so dark that if we were able to get the homicide victimization down from 7 to 1 to 3 to 1, people say, great victory. 3 times as many dead young black men, we would say, whoa, we're really doing good. How long till we live in an equal America? So having a black president or Voting Rights Act, all those are great things, but when can we really say that the sins of yesterday are thoroughly scrubbed?
Do you believe that before there can truly be authentic reconciliation, there has to be a recognition
Sure.
of what has taken place?
Sure. Yeah, that's the thing. We kind of want to just shake hands and go on without paying any heed or credence to why things are the way they are. I have a teaching that I do called Black to the Future, and it's if we had a time machine and went back, and instead of Europeans settling the new continent and pushing out the red man, if Africans had come, if they'd gone to Europe and gotten slaves and brought 500,000 slaves here, 4.5 million roughly slaves in antebellum South, would it be white people on the radio talking about dealing drugs? Would it be white people on the radio 7 to 1 overrepresented in homicide? Would it be white people in prisons at 6 to 7 to 1 the African majority? And here's how you know if you're racist or not. If you believe history was reversed 150 years after the Civil War, if I ask you, so do you believe white people Europeans would be 3 to 1 in poverty, some 5 to 1, 12 to 1, depending on look at HIV and AIDS, new diagnosis, do you believe that would be white people? And do you believe black people, Africans, would be owning the wealth, owning the land, et cetera? And if you say, no, I don't believe that because white people would have figured out something by now, you're making a race statement. You're saying this is not historic. You're saying it's a defect inside the human being.
I know that there's a cost for reconciliation.
Yeah.
Because what it's going to do, it's going to expose the real truth of our hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And to have to go back in the past and to have to recognize that this is wrong, that wasn't exactly the way that was, or we dressed this up.
Right.
Do you think that we can ever experience authentic reconciliation if we keep dressing up the lies?
No, and that's the thing I think that is happening now with this next generation. So World War II ends, the Soviets are coming in from the east, the Allies are, I guess, coming in, French and British coming in from the north. The generals that land at the concentration camps, the first thing they do, and Alfred Hitchcock, believe it or not, was contracted to make this documentary, they go get all the German villagers and walk them through the concentration camps, by the bodies, 50,000 rotting bodies. And they take all the villagers, men, women, and children. You watch them on video. This is within hours. The general says, go get everybody that lives within a couple miles. So they can walk past the stench. You see them retching. You see them having to look at children, hacked up bodies. It's gruesome. And they said, train the cameras on the German faces with the bodies of the Jewish people. They said, why? So that nobody years from now can say America made that up, that it didn't really happen like that. I want German faces with the dead Jewish bodies so that no one will ever say, well, it wasn't that bad. I'm sure it was bad. You need to see the horror. Well, the problem is we didn't have video cameras for our American horror. But now, people carrying cell phones, we act like this is the first time 4 cops ever got together and said, yeah, he came right at me, I had to shoot him. It's been going on for years, but for the first time we're seeing the horror captured for real. And so, whereas, people, I know there was slavery, but it wasn't that bad, or I know, slavery was everywhere. All those things we used to dismiss instead of recognizing the horror. And all my theory is this. Nobody here in your audience or anybody watching around the world, specifically in the States, red, yellow, brown, black, white, we cannot distance ourselves. We can never scrub ourselves clean enough from the impurity of this land. If you say, I'm going to give up every advantage I have, First Lady said, she says, I have to reconcile that every night. Michelle Obama said, I have to sleep in a house built by slaves. There's no place you can run in America that the land isn't stolen and that blood, the backs of other people, even as a black man. If you say, I'm going to give up all my money, I'm going to starve to death, the road that the ambulance takes you to in the hospital was gotten illegally. Even if you starve to death and won't accept the feeding tube, they will bury you in ground that was stolen. None of us can escape. America's a blessed place. It's fortunate. It's on a hill. We have to start by being honest and say, everything we have is tainted. And now start walking with the humility. I was looking at it earlier. Joshua, he says, look, the Reubenites and half the tribe of Manasseh, he said, you have your rest. But you're going to go over here and fight for your brethren until everybody has the same rest you do. So it's up to people that look like me in the power structure. I represent the power structure in this country. To pause and recognize that what we stand on is illegally gotten and immorally gained. And to not quit and not rest until we carve out so that poverty equalizes, infant death equalizes, education equalizes. To not say, well, we're totally free until we've done the dirty, nitty-gritty corner work to ensure that freedom. And I don't think we're ready for that conversation yet, because it gets to, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. That was a long time ago.
Do you think this country is really interested in seeing us come to this place where we can begin to address our past and bring about an effort to try to resolve some of this mindset?
I think because I believe in the better angels of human nature, I think the vast majority of people, red, yellow, brown, black, white, don't enjoy the strife.
Yeah.
I think actuality as people, we're better than our history.
Yeah.
I think when you go out to Starbucks or McDonald's or the grocery store, I think people are by and large doing well. We are not even the negative people we're being portrayed as in the media. I think where we live every day, we're doing okay. But I think the power structure, white people primarily go, there's no problem, because we ignore the systemic issues that haven't been addressed. And I think by and large, people want peace, but they don't want to be honest and ask the real questions. So here's the bottom line. I think we keep misprescribing. We got a black president, well, that's it. That's not it. That's good, but there's got to be more. And I think people say, are you talking about additional welfare? No, I'm saying recognition to say there's a reason that this is not the way it is, and we're not going to dismiss anymore. But there's a general feeling among a lot of whites of we've done everything for them, and not realizing that saying, oh, here's a housing project and here's some schools you can go to, that's not even the issue. The issue is a core belief that this person is not inferior to me. And I believe the vast majority of white people still believe subconsciously that there's not something wrong with America, that there's something deficient in this group of people.
Your identity will ultimately determine how you behave.
Sure.
And if you put on the wrong identity,
sure,
and then the behavior's there, you want to get crucified for your bad behavior, but people don't want to recognize their part in giving you that identity that produced that bad behavior. Now, we're not trying to make excuses for anybody.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is saying, if you're going to experience real change and reconciliation, you got to recognize the truth of the matter.
Right.
And begin to deal with that. Now, this next question, boy.
Can I just say one thing on that? Do you mind?
Sure.
I'm sorry, it's your show, and I don't want to get thrown off. It's my first time.
I promise you I won't.
Okay, good. But this is an interesting thing. At the end of the day, people's decisions rest squarely on their shoulders.
Yeah.
On the individual side. People say, well, this is modern. A lot of whites, not all whites, think, well, if you're black from a broken family, living in a poor part of the country, you deal drugs. That's not true. Do you know how many black kids, single parents, never dealt drugs? Ever. So when you see, well, this guy's in the same neighborhood, dealt drugs, killed 4 people, we say, well, he really had no choice. That's not true. At the end of the day, every person's decision lays squarely on their shoulders.
Yes.
But it's not either or. But when you see people making decisions in a pool at a rate higher than their white counterparts, then you have to say, okay, do white people kill people? Yes. Do black people kill people? Yes. At the time, more than 50% of every black male, 15 to 34, I believe it was, got into the afterlife via homicide. I want you to think about that. Half of it was the number one cause of death for black males, 15 to 34, I believe it was, for like a decade. As a matter of fact, in 2009, I think, was the first time death by law enforcement registered on the top 10 causes of death. Now, among whites, the top 10 causes of death, same age group, white males, is unintentional incidents, accidents, four-wheelers and things like that. But when you die and you say, I've got a room full of 100 kids, how many of you got here by a four-wheeler accident? Half of white kids raise their hand. When you go to the room of 100 black kids, how many of you got here because somebody took your life? Half of the black kids raised their hand. This is not acceptable. So there must be something wrong with black kids, or there's something wrong with the messages. Because actions come out of choices come out of thoughts and feelings come out of worldview and messages. Where are we sending messages that this behavior is more in harmony with who you are and this behavior is not? So it's a war of identity basically from birth on. And so because I have worked in very rough areas with minorities for 20 years of my life, I know that just because somebody's black with no dad around, that grew up in a rough area, that doesn't mean killer, because there's a lot of people that go to school, they don't deal drugs, they respect their parents, blah, blah, blah. But white America says, if you're black born in the hood, you're going to be a killer. That itself becomes... So Tupac, and again, I'm not a fan of Tupac, but there's a fascinating thing he said, and I got to watch my language here. He said, so you know what? I'm going to smoke weed, because that's what, he said, the N-word do. And yeah, I'm going to carry a gun, because he said, if you keep telling me that, that's what I'm going to be. So the deception from the devil comes pushing you in the back towards negativity, and then having you embrace it with a cavalier attitude, knowing every time a kid goes into jail, he pushes you in the back, pushes you in the back, pushes you back, and as soon as that jail cell shuts, the devil goes, man, why'd you do that? The same devil that nudges you into it shames you for doing it on the back end, and so therefore it's a war of identity on all fronts. I mean, he's dead. Tupac is dead. And we say, well, he spoke out for women, he spoke out for this. Yeah, but he was both things at the same time. Yeah. Humiliating them in one video, speaking out for them in the next. The last video we have of him alive is stomping on another black man in a casino and shot down. I mean, he is the collision of consciousness and corruption. He is the prototype for America that beauty and ugly can collide in a human being. Is he a beautiful person or is he a killer? Who knows? Who knows what is? All we know is that as far back as we can remember, we've been sending negative messages that criminal and black are connected. And if we don't get in the way of those messages, how long will it take to stop it? It's a millstone that's been turning. You got to stand in front of it first. You got to slow it down. Then you got to get enough momentum to get it going back direction. How long does it take to get it going in a healthy direction? But that is the church. I don't know what the church is doing. You know, we think, oh my gosh, the worst thing that ever happened is Supreme Court ruled on this or abortion or whatever. Are you serious? The worst thing that ever happened is when we devalued human beings in the name of Christ. That's the worst thing that ever happened.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let's thank our guest, Michael Smith, for coming in and having this challenging but real conversation with us today. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in to this very special edition. We'll continue this conversation on overcoming fear and how to bring healing and reconciliation to your world. Is there racism in the church?
Sure. It's there in its overt and its covert sense. It's hard to see the ugliness of your own heart. The Bible talks about the heart of man is exceedingly deceitful. You just don't really know. You need a mirror to see it, you know.
You know, God knows what we're feeling, and His message to us is don't panic.
People are afraid. They're afraid because we live in a world where hate, bigotry, destruction, and wickedness run rampant, where there is little faith, and where fear destroys lives. Faith and fear. If one exists, then the other can't. If your faith is strong, then you have nothing to fear. If you're afraid, fearful, and filled with anxiety, could it be that you're not putting your trust in God? It doesn't have to be this way. Psalm 23 tells us that even when we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, we should not fear anything because God is with us. Join Dr. Creflo Dollar's journey to transform our world by finding answers and practical solutions to the problems we are all facing right now. Together, we are on a mission to eradicate fear and anxiety and replace it with hope, love, joy, and laughter. We are rebuilding lives, strengthening communities, and it's all done through the power of God's grace and people like you who are seeking change. Dr. Dollar and Mike Smith are committed to helping rehabilitate our country. Today, you can join them in this revolution of change and receive the practical tools to help you become a world changer. With your donation of only $30 or more, you can become part of our mission of change and receive Dr. Dollar's 3-CD series, Your Identity in Christ, which will show you how to become a beacon of change for others. With this series, you'll discover how to transform your life and ignite the spark in others to help rebuild our homes, communities, and the world. You'll also receive Dr. Dollar's popular book, No Fear Here, which will show you how to break through bondage and tackle the stress fueled by fear. Remember, equality and fairness can only be achieved when we learn to overcome our darkest fears and fully develop our faith. And for continued inspiration on your journey of change, as a special gift, you will also receive a full, uncut copy of today's 2-part show. You'll hear more hard questions and life-changing answers from Dr. Dollar and Pastor Smith. So call or go online today and become a part of the change. For only $30, you can make a difference and become part of the Creflo Dollar Ministries team. When you donate to the ministry, you're becoming part of the movement of believers who are changing the world by taking God's message to those in need. Ministry partners are standing by for your call. Don't delay. On Your World, you hear real stories from real people. Each guest receives a reminder of God's plan for good in their lives with the Grace Certificate. Today, you can receive your very own Grace Certificate. This certificate is an inspiring reminder that you are the righteousness of God. Simply go to yourworldwithcreflo.com now or text GRACE to 51555 and download your own certificate in minutes.
Sometimes it's so difficult for Christians to believe that they get something without doing something to get it.
It'll be a great introduction for you to build a foundation of understanding.
It's so awesome that God wants you to do something that equips you to do it at the same time.
You are as pure and holy as Jesus is.
So refreshing to my spirit, my soul, and my body.
More abundance of grace you believe God has given you, the more you're going to be bold.
World Changers Church International. Service times are Saturdays at 6 p.m., Sundays at 10 a.m., and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. For more information, visit us online at creflodollarministries.org. Because of you, Creflo Dollar Ministries is providing a new understanding of grace and empowering change in the lives of millions of people every day. Thank you, partners and friends. Your love and financial support makes it possible to bring this message into millions of homes all across the globe.